I'm Anne Blair Brown, and I call myself a contemporary impressionist.
Hello and welcome to Art, where we get up close and personal with women from around the world of visual arts. I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Season 2, Episode 27. My guest this week is the contemporary impressionist Anne Blair Brown. Her work centres on intimate scenes inspired by local surroundings as well as travel in the US and abroad. She says, "My artwork starts in reality and evolves through my imagination. As an impressionist, I believe in a painting process that enables me to tap into my creativity rather than trying to copy and perfect. My goal is to invite you, the viewer, to connect to the painting such that you personalise the experience and use your own imagination to complete the story." Anne was born in North Kingstown, Rhode Island, and at the age of 4, her family moved to Tennessee. Her mother is Rachel Blair, a licensed clinical social worker and caterer, and her father, James Brown, is a financial advisor. She is the youngest of 3 children. She has an older brother and sister. Anne attended St. Henry's School and the Harpeth Hall School in Nashville, Tennessee, followed by the University of Georgia and Watkins College of Art and Design, Nashville, where she earned an associate degree. She began teaching art some 25 years ago and offers online courses and workshops for painters of all skill levels. Her in-person sessions take place at Bluebird Hill Retreat in Santa Fe, Tennessee. Anne lives in Nashville, Tennessee with her husband, the impressionist and abstract artist Trey Finney. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Well, you're in Nashville, Tennessee, not where you grew up, but very much your home now. We've had other guests who've been from this area. There must be something in the water down there for artists. What is it?
I don't know, but we hear that all the time. I can name on my fingers and toes the talented people that come from this area, and maybe it's the beauty, maybe it's the inspiration. Most of these people I'm friends with and proud to call them friends. But we just feel really lucky to have so many wonderful artists in this area.
And you moved there when you were actually very young, but you were born in Rhode Island, again, a wonderful place for artists too, so scenic, and spent some time in New England, in Connecticut, because your father was in the Navy. So what would be your very earliest memories then, Anne, since you moved so young?
I think my earliest memories are actually in Connecticut. I laugh sometimes because I think we see photographs and then we call them memories. So I'm not sure that I have memories from 3 years old. But if I had to solidify what the memories are, it would be probably in Nashville. And we moved into apartments and then our first home and the creek behind our house and that kind of thing. So probably Nashville at 4 years old is my first memory.
And you're the youngest of 3.
I am.
And what was that like, being the youngest? Was it an advantage? Did you get parental favors because you were the youngest?
Chris, I got beat up a lot.
Oh, no.
My brother and sister, they actually, I love them dearly. My brother and I in particular are very close to this day, but they would fight over me. And one time they actually sprained my arm when I was just very little. But that made me, if I think about it now, I feel very loved. They were fighting over me. But it's been an advantage in terms of, watching them and the mistakes they made as teenagers and learning what not to do. And my brother would giggle if he heard me say that. And, you know, when you're the baby, you tend to get less rules placed on you. So, while I think I was a good child, I didn't have a whole lot of rules like they had. So, but I think that it's, all in all a benefit to be the youngest.
What do you think were the advantages then?
Well, I mean, you know, again, I being an artist, I'm an observer and I'm also very quiet. You know, by nature, I'm very quiet. So I just watched. I watched and I learned. And again, I learned what not to do when they were being bad teenagers. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that. They're in trouble, and that doesn't feel good. But it's the being able to sit back and watch people before you and learn from them. I think that was the biggest advantage.
Did you make friends easily when you were younger that would side with you?
I did. I think I've always been, I've blessed to attract very nice people into my life. And I had many young friends that are still friends today that, they also taught me, I guess, we socialize not only through our siblings, but, from our young friends. And, to this day, I am friends with people I was friends with in kindergarten, and high school, and, learned a lot from them.
Now, what about your grandparents? What role did they have in your life?
Well, I would say my grandparents, they lived in New York for a long time, so we would visit them. And then my grandfather fell ill, and they actually moved to Nashville so we could be closer to them. And I would say that my grandmother is probably one of the biggest influences in my life, because I just naturally, from osmosis, inherited so much of her personality. She's passed away in 2015, but she was a spitfire and just hilarious. I mean, whip smart, funny, and she had us in stitches until the day she died, pretty much at 97. But I have her hands, I have her color eyes, and I have her sense of humor. So I'm really grateful for that.
Which side of the family?
It's my father's parents. My mother was adopted, and while I was close to her adoptive father, there wasn't the blood relation. So my grandmother on my dad's side is I love seeing parts of her in me. It makes me feel very close to her.
Did she encourage you to do art as a child?
She didn't. She wasn't around me that much when I was a child. And to be honest, I'm a bit of a late bloomer, and, nobody really knew what I was up to. nobody knew what was brewing inside until much later. And, I would say my mother's the biggest influence that way. She and my dad, who, is one of my biggest cheerleaders to this day. I don't think he understood it. He's a money guy, a numbers guy. So I don't think he, if he saw me drawing, he just thought I was, being a child drawing. And my mother very early on picked up on that I had some talent, and she was probably the main encouragement. And again, now in current day, my whole family they're all my biggest cheerleaders.
That's wonderful. So when you were quiet in the corner, if you weren't drawing or if you were outdoors, what were you up to?
Well, I would draw a lot. I remember the second house we moved into in Nashville when I was probably 8 years old. I would go in the driveway and I would build little forts, and I would build, this is so funny. I would make little towns. I would take sticks and make little log cabins and make towns. So I don't know where that came from, but anything that led me outside creating was probably the most fun for me. And I would make mud sculptures, and I didn't realize that it wouldn't solidify like clay, but you would very often find me in a creek, just playing in the mud, really, to be honest with you, a little bit of a tomboy.
Bit of a tomboy. Now, was Elizabeth, your sister, and your brother Jim, were they playing with you?
Yeah, we all played a lot together. My brother and I in particular, we just, from the get-go, we just seemed to have a connection. And we would always play. I think if his friends weren't around, he would just grab me, his little sister, and I just was more portable than my older sister. And so we would go down to our creek and go fishing. We had this game we called hall hockey, and we'd wad up a piece of aluminum foil, close all the doors in this hallway that we had, and we would play hockey. And weren't those the days? Now we're all on cell phones, right?
Yes, absolutely. Making our own fun. What about pets? Did you ride, or were the dogs or cats?
We had dogs. We had, my mother had grown up with Cocker Spaniels. So, I think at one point my father had said no dogs, and my mother's best childhood friend didn't care for that. So she went and got us a Cocker Spaniel and brought it over. And that was our first wonderful, wonderful dog named Rufus. And we loved him so much. And we're huge animal people and wouldn't have survived without a dog. And then we had another Cocker Spaniel after Rufus passed away, Muffin. But I've actually have cats now, and my family they're not cat people. But if it has fur, then it's welcome in my house because I love animals. And so glad that we got that first Cocker Spaniel and that started the ball rolling.
So no place for a dog then, or you just prefer to have cats right now?
We had, Trey brought
Your husband?
Wonderful. Yes. Trey Finney, my husband, he's also an artist. He brought a beagle into the mix, and she lived to be 18, and we had to have her put down. So, couldn't have asked for more years than that. And I just yesterday was telling him, when are we getting a dog? But my cats they're a family, a mother and 2 children, and they're geriatric. So we just feel like we want to just, love on them for the rest of their lives. And then we'll probably pivot into dogs so that we have a more portable pet. And, I don't want to downplay my love for my kitties. But I do look forward to having a dog.
Are they keeping you company when you're in the studio, Anne?
Oh, yes. They try to get in my lap. They try to get me to sit down so they can get in my lap. They might skulk behind me and lie down behind my feet, and I don't realize it because they're so quiet. But they are just a huge part of my everyday life. And they're sweet and friendly and fun. And they're usually around me. I suspect somebody might try to get in my lap here in about 5 minutes. So I'll try to not make that happen.
Well, let's talk about the early beginnings with the drawing, the art, and how that came about. Was it something you learned in school, or were you just a child that was noodling in the corner at home?
Well, it's interesting because I went to a Catholic school, and it was heavy on religious teachings, and they did not focus on art, this particular school. And I remember it was almost like we had to be good little kids to have art class, and that was a treat. And I think that's a shame, because I remember several people in my class, even in 4th grade, 3rd grade, that were so talented. And I'm sure they went on to get more education. So at my first school, that wasn't really a thing. And so again, it was great that my mom encouraged me to draw. And, it was later when I went to, secondary school, which started in 6th grade and went up to 12th grade. And they had a huge art program. And that's when I started realizing, I think this is what I want to do. Although, then I went to the University of Georgia and, went to art school there. But again, I'm a late bloomer, so I didn't realize you could pursue it and make a living at it. So, I feel like people that have hardcore education at a very early age are very lucky. And although I did not have that, we all figured it out, and it eventually happened.
What kind of things were you drawing as a child then? What was interesting you?
Well, I remember distinctly not knowing, I remember drawing a squirrel and showing it to my mother. And that's the first memory I have of her saying, wow, that looks like a squirrel. And, I don't know if you remember, but in the magazines, there were those little contests, and you would copy like a little cartoon rat or something and send it in. And that was like, oh, I can do that. And, I did the paint by numbers and all that. And I think just while that's all comical, and not taken seriously, getting implements into your little hands and just starting anywhere, I think is wonderful. And again, I just sort of, oh, I like doing that. That feels good. And I made that thing look like a squirrel. And well, that's exciting. And, it just started, steamrolling from there. And when I did have art class, I excelled, and that, and then all went from there.
Did you visit galleries and museums? Were your parents very keen to show you the world of art and culture?
Not when I was little. No, again, my dad was kind of a financial guy, and my mother was, what she did for us was, she was a Brownie and a Girl Scout leader and an avid camper and hiker. And, she showed me my love of the outdoors, which to this day is my favorite thing to paint. I love being outdoors painting more than just about anything. So, I don't think she grew up with an art background, and so it just wasn't prevalent in our life, and it was just something I sort of figured out on my own. But as I got older, and as she and I started traveling together, that art was the focus, and we delighted in going to museums and galleries. But it just started a little bit later for me.
Tell us about some of those trips.
Well, we had some wonderful trips. The first memories of traveling were when my family would go to the beach, and we were South Carolina lovers. And so we'd never vacationed in Florida. We would go to South Carolina, where my parents met, actually. And that led me to my mom would take me to Charleston, which to this day is the love of my life. I love that town. I have so many friends there. And that was the first time I felt like, oh, I want to paint this. This architecture is speaking to me. And so that kind of started the ball rolling. And then as I got older, meaning, past 21, we've taken trips. We went to Santa Barbara and I painted there, and we went to all the galleries, New York City, just places that are just laden with either natural beauty or a vibrant art scene. I relish those times. We don't do it as much anymore as we're both getting much older, but I don't forget the museums I've been able to see. Lucky enough as a teenager to have taken a school trip to England, where I saw the Tate, and, just life-changing things that happened along the way.
What memories do you have of that visit?
Well, I went on, the trip was a group. We were juniors in high school, and we visited so many, architectural landmarks. And I remember that everybody, when we were on the bus, we went, from town to town, and we went to Scotland, and eventually we landed in London. And I remember everybody just sleeping on the bus, and I'm thinking, open your eyes, people. Look at this. I could not believe what I was looking at, the landscape. And again, that speaks to how much I love to paint outside. But it's interesting. I have a friend who texted me right before I got on with you. She's in London at the Tate, and she sent me pictures, and that just sparked the whole thing. Like, I don't remember everything I saw, but I remember just being floored, absolutely floored, by the art I saw. And I thought, wow, this is something that I want to do. I want to be in this world.
Which artists were appealing to you?
I think at the time, if all the French Impressionists just knocked my socks off. And there's been probably an oversaturation of Monet posters and college dorms and that kind of thing. And it might have saturated it a little bit, but the glory is, and the talent is never wasted on me. I remember seeing, again, it's the French Impressionists, and the painting the Sunday afternoon on the Isle of La Grande Jatte. That I remember thinking, my God, how much time did that take? And it's so large and just fascinating. But I think my biggest influence is Edward Vuillard. And if I'm in a town where there's a museum and it has an Edward Vuillard, I will beeline to it. And there's something about his interiors and the patterns he created. And I still study it. You can't paint like somebody, but you can certainly be influenced. And I've, not recently, but I've been kind of known for painting interiors. And when the weather's nice, I don't do it as much, but I would say Vuillard was my biggest inspiration there.
And at what point then, with that sort of immersion into the art world and in your formative years, did you decide that absolutely is what I want to do? and I can do it, that it was within the realms of possibility. This wasn't just something you could visit in a gallery and just dream about, because you chose to go to Watkins College of Art and Design. So at what point was the career path determined?
I think that in the later years in high school, in my maybe 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and, you start looking at colleges at that point. And quite frankly, I was a decent student. I did what I could do to get by, but I'm not very good in math. And I just never glommed on to any specific path. And then I thought, well, I can draw. And I surely love doing that. And I wish I could tell you that I had this, burning path course set for myself. But really, I visited the University of Georgia as one of the college's choices, and I had a really good time, and I knew they had a good art program. So that's where I landed right out of high school. And I would love to tell you that there was a lot of thought that went into that. But basically, it was the universe putting me in the right place, I think. And I got a really nice, very foundational education. So it wasn't until I knew I had to go to college that I thought, all right, that's what I'm going to college for. And then I did 4 years at the University of Georgia and continued my education at Watkins here in Nashville. And I think that's really, I learned to draw at Georgia, but I think I learned how to paint at Watkins. And just a small school, but I remember the two very influential teachers, 3 actually, that really taught me brushwork and color, and that's carried with me to this day.
What mediums were you using then in those days, Anne?
Really just oil. I did a color class where we used gouache just to practice color patterns and things like that, but that was just for not to use as creation, but just as learning. So I was always into oil paint, and it's something. It's a lifetime journey to learn how to get that oil paint to stay where you want it. But that's what I primarily painted in for years and years, and cut to modern advancements in the last 10, 12, 15 years, and I've moved to water-soluble oils just to get rid of that Gamsol factor or terp, whatever you want to call it. And I've also fallen in love with acrylics. So oils got me started, but now I feel like getting in one lane and staying there is not very creative. So I like to try new things and constantly add different mediums and surfaces and brushes and subjects to my repertoire.
Palette knife? Do you use knives much?
I really just use palette knives to premix my paint and to clean up. I don't technically use them to paint with. I have dabbled in flat surfaces and produced some paintings in the past with palette knife-like implements. But I always go back to my brushes. That's a great feeling to me, is that feeling of that drag that a nice hog bristle brush can give you.
Now, your colors are very vivid, very happy, bright, cheerful colors, a wonderful palette that you have. Is that relative to you as a person? Is that kind of colors you would wear and the home decor that you would choose?
That's a really good question. I actually prefer, as for decor and clothing, a more muted palette. And I think if I could get deep for a second, I would probably say that the colorful nature of my paintings is kind of how I feel inside, and the muted palette that I love is kind of how I proceed in life. I like to be low key, and again, I'm still quiet. I was quiet as a child, and when I talk about art, I get very extroverted, but other than that, I'm pretty much an introvert, a thinker. So that was an interesting question. So, it's, I guess the colorful is how I feel inside, and that's what comes out.
Why do you think art brings that out in you then, and you go from being, the quiet everyday woman that you are to someone who can be more performative and outgoing and extrovert through their art. What has it taught you about yourself?
Well, it's taught me a lot. And if I never started, I started teaching maybe 25 years ago, and that alone is what has given me confidence as a human being. Cause I just like, normal human beings, we can lack self-esteem, confidence. I'm not good enough. I can't be an artist. You can't make money at that. But I started teaching, and what happened was I had to find a way to articulate what I do. And, not everybody does that. And once I did that, that led to, oh, well, then what if I do it this way? And so, I guess to answer your specific question, it's just, it's the love of my life is art and making art and being creative. And, that's probably just, I was born with that. But then what are you going to do with that? Well, again, teaching and talking about it and learning new ways to talk about it, and, finding new ways to, grow yourself, and then having even more information to share with eager students. So it's been probably, I would say the two biggest things that have put me where I am today in terms of being at a level, a higher level of painting, are teaching and articulating, and then, painting outside and really understanding atmosphere and colors.
Was standing up in front of a class, was that difficult to start off with, Anne? How did you navigate that to become confident enough, and not because the knowledge you just had to have the self-confidence that you could teach and people would listen?
I think I just found it, and I can harken back on one of my first workshops. I was so nervous, and I wasn't very good at it when I first started, because I wasn't, I didn't know I was a teacher until I started figuring out that I was a teacher. And so, I continued to get nervous there, when there's something unknown. I always have, okay, how's this going to go? I want to help people. Am I going to say the right thing? That's a constant. But it never goes away that you have a nervousness, but, the more you do it and the more experience you gain standing in front of people talking, the easier it gets. And, I read a funny quotation by Mark Twain the other day, and it said something to the effect of, I've had a lot of worries in my life, not many of which came true. And so I remember that when I'm, about to do a demo in front of over 300 people, which I did last week. And, I always, I'm a little nervous. And then once I start talking and connecting with the audience, I'm having a blast. And I think it's just the experience and the years and the mileage in doing it that's made it easier.
I was going to ask you about that, because you'd mentioned that you just attended the plein-air convention where there were 1,200 people. That's no small group. Having to stand up and in front of those can be intimidated, those kind of numbers. So now you feel that you have the self-confidence and obviously self-confidence about your ability and your standing as an artist. I would imagine that would give you confidence. It's not a small thing, is it? I mean, not everybody can teach, and not everybody wants to stand up in front of those crowds. Right.
It is no small thing. And again, it came out of left field for me. My family would tell you when I was younger, I've mentioned I was quiet, but nobody knew that this was coming, and that, I'm really grateful to get feedback that I am a good teacher, and people say, you're a great teacher and you're a great artist. And that's a winning combo. That doesn't always happen that way. And, just that compliments me back and forth and up and down. It makes me very happy when people say things like that. But yeah, it's just, I think that I just love it so much. And if I can connect with people, I had a student once, she said, how do you get up and demo in front of us? Aren't you nervous? And I said, well, first of all, artists are lovely people. And if I do what one might call a bad painting, y'all are going to forgive me, and you're going to at least see my process, whether it turns out into a beautiful painting or not. So I take that pressure off myself, and I focus on connecting to the audience, connecting to the students. Everybody has a bit of a fear factor with art. Walking up to a white canvas is terrifying for a lot of people, even myself. And so I've come to just delight in saying, okay, I have a myriad of ways you can get that white canvas to go away. And if you see it this way and do it that way, you're going to be off to a great start. And the finishes are up to each individual. But that's kind of how I think if I'm nervous or I'm in front of a crowd or even a small group of students and I have to perform. I rely on their kindness, and I rely on my ability to articulate what I'm doing, even if it isn't perfect.
You mentioned you had a Catholic school education, but I understand that organized religion is not particularly important to you, but you are spiritual. How does that help you and inform your art? Do you study that in some way? Do you meditate?
I read a lot of books that are more inspirational and self-growth kind of things. And it really has connected to the art world in terms of how I maneuver, how I talk to people. I feel like, and I applaud anybody who believes in something that helps them be a good person and helps them help others. But after being raised Catholic, it just, I had enough of the institutionalization of it, and some, not all. And I wouldn't say this about one religion, but looking around, I've seen a lot of hypocrisy in my life in all religions. And so I just personally connect more to just a direct relationship with God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And, having it guide me in the way I maneuver and the way I talk to people. But it's art is in and of itself a spiritual connection for me, especially when I'm outdoors painting.
I was going to add the word nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big part of it for me. And, again, I had mentioned before that I love to paint interiors. And that's a lot of man-made stuff, but, painting outside and looking at nature and understanding is the key word there. Then that helps you with studio work. So if you've only ever painted from photographs, you might not be at a level that you want, because photographs just kind of lie to us. But nature has just always been a huge part of me, and it does translate into my art.
Tell us about music and how that plays a role in your life. Is it in the studio with you?
Yes, always. I love music. My family loves music. We don't necessarily play music, but as in terms of instruments. But my dad has his favorites. He actually, back when iPod was the only way to listen to music, past before iTunes and all that kind of stuff. From memory, he listed maybe 100 songs and the people who wrote or sang them. And he said, "Would you put this on an iPod for me?" And so he and my mother is the same way. She has just absolute favorites that just send her places. And my brother's the same way. So I'm a big fan of music that is melodic. I'm not a fan of angry music, or I love Joni Mitchell. Some modern favorites, Lord Huron. You'll see that on my playlist when I get it to you. I love the Moody Blues. Absolute, on a rainy day, that's hands down what I listen to. I listen to Pandora, so I'll plug in that station and then get all kinds of beautiful music. But so my taste, even though I was born in 1969, spans from the 60s, 70s, and up until certain modern things. I'm not a big fan of music in the 90s, but for whatever reason. but I kind of have an old soul with certain bands.
If you were driving in the car and you had all your family, you had your parents and your husband Trey, would you get to choose the music, and would it be something that everyone would agree to?
I think so. Trey and I have very similar tastes in music. We stray just on a couple of things, but generally everything we listen to together is a similar pattern. My parents, they wouldn't agree on each other's music, but my mother's a Beatles fan, and my dad, he used to say he doesn't like the Beatles, and I just don't know anybody who doesn't like the Beatles. And there's something seriously wrong there. But yeah, my mom and Trey and I in a car, we would absolutely. And then my dad and Trey and I in a car, absolutely.
Now, you mentioned that Trey was also an artist. So tell us your story. How did you guys connect?
So Trey, I was the secretary of a group called the Plein-air Painters of the Southeast. And my good friend Richard Oversmith was president, and he put this work in front of me. He said, what do you think of this guy? Should we invite him to be in this group? And I said, oh, I love it. Absolutely. And and Trey had, in his previous life, he had worked as an animator for Disney. So very successful. So when he retired from that, and his path is now, he's a little bit more abstract and exploratory. And anyway, so he joined the group, and he was married at the time, and eventually, and unfortunately, his wife passed away, and we connected, and the rest is history. And it's so nice to share a passion with your spouse. It's not always the case, and we love painting together. We love going on trips to paint and painting in the studio together. So that's been a really interesting, welcomed and delightful twist for me.
Yes, I can think of some other famous artists in the past who were married. Pollock comes to mind, of course, Lee Krasner, and many others of that era, of course, that were married. Mitchell is another one. So do you have the same studio?
We do. And Trey technically still has his house in Spartanburg because his father is older and he wants to make sure he's there for him. And so periodically Trey will go back to Spartanburg, and but when he's here, we do share a studio, and it's very spacious, and he's got a nice corner, and I'm kind of sectioned off where I can be a little bit private, and we just really support each other. And we do have a rule that one does not comment on the other's art unless asked. And Trey found that out the hard way. But, there have been times, I remember in a specific time I was struggling with something, and I didn't need anybody to say anything. And he just kind of came up and said, what if you, and that hit me the wrong way. So I just said, honey, I have an idea. Let's make a pact that one needs to ask for advice. And so we stick to that just to make sure nobody gets their feelings hurt. And there's no competition between us at all. Only support, but anybody listening knows that, someone says the wrong thing at the wrong time. It doesn't go well.
So when you finished a work, is Trey the first one to be shown it, or how do you feel about that?
Well, probably. The word finish is an interesting term. I do put things in front of him, and we don't have the exact same style. So what I consider finish might be a little rougher than what he considers finish. So I can't say that I ask him, is this finished? My question to him would often be, what else would you do to this? And if he says something like, make all the lines straight, then I don't listen to him. 'Cause I love a good wonky line. So, but yeah, and this is a funny thing. Social media can be a bear, but it can also be a friend. And very often I'll just put something out there and say, I'm not sure if I'm finished. And, likes don't mean that it's good, but if I get a response from people that, have often said, "Oh, stop, don't go any further," that's something that I do often. And I like that. I like that option.
Well, just going back to how you guys obviously merged into the same universe and you belong in the art world, but I'm curious as to where you got married or even where the proposal came.
Oh, that's a good question. So we bought a farmhouse about 50 minutes southwest of Nashville, and we bought it in 2018. We renovated it, and we turned the barn into sort of a barn studio. And the first thing that happened was, so we got married in the barn, and it was rustic and casual, and it was only family and friends. And that was May 20 of 2023. And so in November of 2022, Trey we had actually been seeing an acupuncturist for allergies and other, even emotional things. And he had lost his mother and his dog. We had to put the dog down, and a lot of things kind of caught up with him. So this acupuncturist just kind of helped both of us gain clarity and kind of shed some baggage. And so our acupuncturist got engaged, and he came home and he said, she got engaged. And I said, "Oh, that's great." And so the next day he was just literally just kind of outside. I was in my office and he was kind of in the other room. And he said, "Did I tell you that she got engaged?" And I said, "Yeah, you told me." And he said, "Well, I was thinking that we should do that." And that's what happened. It was the day before Thanksgiving. And I said, "Come in here. What are you?" He said, "I think I'm asking you to marry me." And I said, "I'm saying yes." So it was a really healthy, we just were just that, we'd been dating, we've been together about 8 years. So at that time it was a little less. And, I'm so glad that we waited and we didn't rush into anything, because we both, and we talk about it almost all the time. We were both, at the age and at the stage of our lives that we just think this is perfect timing, and, we're blissful, that we've taken this step.
It sounds a conversational proposal, but did he get down on one knee?
He did not, and that's okay. I'm not like that. I'm kind of a practical gal, and to be honest, he just the words and hugging and saying yes, that I'll never forget it. I don't need a whole lot of hoopla and diamonds, and we ended up picking out a lovely ring later, but it was perfect the way it happened. I don't need a lot of pomp and circumstance. And
the wedding itself was in the barn, so you organized all of that, did you? Decor and everything.
Yes. And I actually, at this age, I I'm middle-aged. I won't say how old, but I really didn't want a big deal, and I don't technically ever want a big deal. So we decorated lightly. The significant part of what happened was, I mentioned earlier some of my best friends that are still my best friends that I had acquired in high school. And these 4 ladies just stepped up to the plate. And my friend Elizabeth, who I've been friends with since we were 11 years old, she did the flowers, and all I had to do was pay for them. She did not want any money, and it was gorgeous. And then the day before, I was just kind of exhausted, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And my other 3 girlfriends came in and said, "All right, here's what we're doing." And they just whipped it all into shape. And so, it was absolutely perfect. I didn't have a whole lot to do with it except provide the things that they hung. And I won't forget that. I won't forget that, what they did for me selflessly, and that they would do it again.
And the music, who chose that?
So we have, I'm a member of a CSA, Community Sustained Agriculture, and there's a farm about 12 minutes from our farmhouse, and I've been getting veggies from them. It's called Farm and Fiddle for years, and the Samantha is the wife, and she's the farmer. And then Daniel is her husband. He's also a farmer, but he plays the fiddle. So I had them assemble a little band, and so it was just fiddle playing and little guitar, and they just played with it what they wanted. We had no preset anything, and it was absolutely lovely.
Sounds idyllic.
Yeah.
And now with having so much interest, together, the two of you being so immersed in art on a daily basis, and I'm wondering what you enjoy when you're not painting. Do you give yourselves a weekend off, or how do you structure your timetable?
Well, it never gets old. I always want to paint. I always want to talk art. I always want to look at art. But back to the nature thing, I am an avid hiker, and Trey works out at a gym, but goes with me on hikes when he can. And so my leisure time is spent hiking or biking, and also cooking. Actually, I love to cook and used to do it for a living. And so those are, the cooking is another creative outlet that I love. But honestly, I never think, oh, my job, I need a break. I think, if I don't feel like painting, there's something I can do for the business. If I absolutely just don't want to think about art, I cook.
Your mother, Rachel, was also a cook then. So was that the influence? Did she encourage you?
Absolutely. She's always been a cook, and she owned a catering business for 20 years. And I actually worked with her for a while, and then I ended up getting other jobs in restaurants, and doing it for a living, because there was a time after college, a long time, where I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my art. I didn't know what to do, to be honest with you. And so I made the living cooking, and then but my mother was a huge influence and continues to be in that realm. And my brother's a bit of a foodie also. And actually his daughter is, and now his son is becoming one. So we love to eat and we love to cook.
What kind of cuisine?
Really just farm to table. If it grows in the land, just the right amount of heat and seasoning, nothing fancy. I love this time of year. June's upon us, and the tomatoes are bursting and the corn's growing, and really that just requires a little bit of, the tomatoes don't require any cooking, but generally I just go to farmers markets and pick what's fresh and prepare it correctly. Hopefully.
So every day is a feast then, not just Thanksgiving in this family.
Correct. We do love it. My brother loves to entertain. He actually bought the house next to our farmhouse. So he lives out in the country and is a avid griller. And it's probably our favorite pastime. And that's what brings our family close.
Just going back to your art then, Anne, you've just finished the plein-air convention. What else is on your schedule in terms of workshops and conventions this year and shows?
Well, so far this year I've been faculty at 2 plein-air events. One of them was in March called Plein-air South. I've taught some workshops in person and online. And so upcoming, I've got 2 online workshops this summer, one in June and one in August. And those run one day a week for a month. So four sessions. And COVID kind of inspired me to, understand how to teach online. And I think my workshops are interactive and fun, and I give homework. So it's not just a student staring at a screen alone. We talk, we communicate during the week. So those are a lot of fun. And then, I've got one in September at our Bluebird Hill retreat, and, it's such a nice, the feedback I get from students is, it's just so peaceful. We feed everybody, lunch, and my mother makes beautiful, healthy lunches. And it is a retreat. The word Bluebird Hill retreat is correct. So we really look forward to those in-person ones too.
And in terms of your shows and galleries, where would we find your work in public?
I am represented in several galleries. My local representation is in Leapers Fork, Tennessee, and that's Leapers Creek Gallery. And it's just a beautiful gallery. The area is it's become a major destination, and a lot of country music people and actually movie stars have moved there. I'm also in Meyer Vogel Gallery in Charleston, another favorite. And I actually have a show coming up, a group show in July, opening July 27th with them. And then I'm up in Provincetown at Simi Marilis Gallery, and in Kennebunkport at Landmark Gallery. And, I wish I had more time to paint because I do so many things. I wish I had tons and tons of art in all the galleries, but sometimes I'm a little slow to produce. But in general, they've been really successful for me. And I personally love everybody that I work with.
So what percentage of your day is painting then as opposed to teaching?
Well, it depends on the week. But this spring has just found me painting outside because of the events I was doing and the teaching. And so my previous comment was just about studio work and larger paintings. One of my galleries is always saying, "Oh, I love your large paintings. Why haven't you given us any?" It's because I'm not in the studio. I'm outside. But then I have times like I'm just finished the convention, so I'm here and I've got a month and a half or so where I could just, I will go outside, of course, but get some larger paintings done. And, I love retreating into the studio after a lot of outdoor painting because it's, I call it reacting and reflecting. So I sometimes will take those smaller outdoor paintings and use them as reference for larger indoor paintings. So it's a lot more fun than just looking at a photograph.
So what would you say would be your favorite light and also your favorite places to paint? I know you can just step outside your door and paint so much there. You have a rich canvas there. But what about, other states? Do you go up to New England and you go back to your childhood roots there and enjoy the lights in New England?
Well, because I've had a close tie with the gallery in Provincetown, there was a time, I'm just going to say before COVID, where I was up there a lot, and I love painting on Cape Cod. I just absolutely love it. So that's a favorite, but I haven't been in quite a while. Would love to go back. Charleston is a favorite place that Trey and I probably get to Charleston at least 4 times a year, if not more. And, just painting around town or going to the smaller areas where there's boats and shrimpers. And that might be my second favorite thing to paint besides my countryside here in Tennessee.
And where do you feel the most satisfaction from your work? Which part of it?
Well, I love when I connect with viewers, and it's not so much someone saying, "Oh, this is a good painting." It's when they say, "I feel like I'm there." And then I've heard people say, "You just give me such joy. If I know you painted this in joy because I feel it." That's where I get the most satisfaction in the reaction of whoever is kind enough to look at my work. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfect painting. It just, if I painted it in joy and, used my experience correctly, it's going to work and resonate with certain people. And that gives me joy.
And so you're painting every day?
Not every day. No, and I can't, the things I do for teaching and, recording demos and travel. And, I find that it's not every day, but it's consistent enough and has been consistent enough that, if I have a stint where I haven't painted in 2 weeks, say, it's definitely like riding a bicycle. It doesn't leave you. But if I'm not painting, I'm doing something art related, to promote my business.
So the satisfaction comes in many forms as long as it's art.
Yes, I think that's very accurate. It's not always about, look at this pretty painting I did. It's about, look how far I've come. Look at the connection I made with groups of people. that's kind of what it's all about is the humanity of it, I think.
It seems you're in a very peaceful place and very centered, both as a person and as an artist. Would that be an accurate summation?
I think that's accurate, yes. I think it didn't come easy and it didn't come quickly. But when you are aware of things in your life that aren't working, and you find a way to grow, get better, get past, it's that lands you in a more centered area. And I definitely think that you never arrive, but I feel centered, and Trey being in my life has also really helped with that. And having such a strong, loving family and such a strong, loving group of friends contributes greatly to that. So I appreciate my family and my friends hanging in there for the times I wasn't so balanced, because I know we all go through things. But things are really peaceful now, I think. So that is an accurate statement.
Well, long may you continue to produce beautiful work, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast and being my guest this week.
It was an absolute pleasure, and I appreciate you inviting me, Chris.
And if you follow the show notes below this episode, you'll find the link to Anne's social media and to her website, where you can view her work and also find out more about her courses. And if you're on Instagram, do give us a follow at the AART Podcast. That's art with 2 A's. Leave any comments and questions there, or even suggestions for guests. But as always, if you prefer email, you can reach us at hollowellstudios@gmail.com. My thanks again to my guest this week, Anne Blair Brown, and as always, to you for listening. I'll be back next week with another talented artist as my guest, so I do hope you'll join me then.